This is Nathara at CrowSong Lodge, and today I'm going to talk a little bit more about politics and witchcraft. Now, I know some of you are already balking because I said the dreaded P word already, but hang in there with me. We're not going to be diving into the current political climate just yet. But I do want to talk a little bit about why I feel it's important that we start talking about politics in general in our communities and society, especially since we're already talking about spirituality and religion. I'm moving my keyboard because Kane wants to hang out with us today, and I want him to be able to do that. So politics and religion have a nasty reputation as being an impolite topic to discuss. And one of the reasons why it's such an impolite topic is because people get very, very heated over it. And we don't like to have fights with people that we like. And that's fair. Those are real, honest to goodness feelings, and we have really good reasons for having those feelings. However, on this channel and in the communities that I participate in and help manage and administrate and stuff, we're already like tap dancing all over those topics as it is, because we're discussing religion and spirituality to begin with. And I know a lot of people like to keep religion and spirituality separate. They consider those entirely different topics, but with religion and spirituality and philosophy and politics, we're all kind of addressing the same bundle of issues in similar ways from different angles. We're talking about what is reality, who and what are the gods, how do we interface with them, and as a result, how do we interface with each other? And so, as a result of those topics, religion and spirituality and politics and witchcraft and philosophy all becomes this like big tangled ball that's really, really hard to separate out into distinct categories where we can be like, yes, we discuss spirituality, but we don't talk about politics, because there's going to be bleed over where people are going to be like, that's a line, we just crossed the line. So there's a real important reason why I feel it's necessary that we start talking about these topics. And that really important reason is ethics and morals. Now, a lot of people feel that when we're talking about politics, we're talking about the game of politics, strategic maneuvers that politicians make in order to win the game, get their policies pushed through, and get a better reputation or more favor among the populace than everybody else. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. What we're going to talk about is the administration of a society. So we have a situation in life where there's a lot of people, and somehow we all have to get along. And all of us getting along is what we call a society or a civilization. And the rules that govern how we behave towards and amongst each other are usually considered laws, but we also have taboos, mores, manners, etiquette, and all sorts of other things depending on the severity, the severity for breaking them, and exactly what kind of behaviors they address. For instance, the etiquette in an office, a business office, is going to be different from the etiquette in a courtroom, which is going to be different from the etiquette at your mother-in-law's at Thanksgiving. So all those situations have different behaviors that you're expected to adhere to in order to keep the peace among the other people also in those situations. And so when you get into the more severe forms where you've got laws and regulations and expectations and stuff, we're very much getting into politics, although those politics also inform things like the etiquette around the dinner table at your Thanksgiving dinner. So this is the kind of politics I'm talking about. I'm not going to talk about the gaming and the campaigning and the reputations and propaganda and stuff right now. Not today anyway. I'm going to talk about those wider issues of how we behave around each other, how we treat each other, and how we determine what rules we're going to have and what rules we're not going to have, and what the consequences for those rules are. Because this is very much where we cross over into religion, spirituality, and philosophy, and it's still politics. When we address these things in the New Age and spiritual and witchy communities, we don't usually acknowledge that we're talking about politics or religion. we'll call it all spirituality, but we're very much addressing those things. When we talk about things like twin flames, or we talk about reincarnation, or we're talking about the afterlife in any way, we're addressing the concept of souls. And not everybody in the pagan or spiritual or witchy community even believes that we have souls, right? There are some very secular witches out there. There are some witches and pagans who believe that we're here for the time that we're here, and then after we're done, we cease being an individual soul, and we go back to whatever they call the Great Soul Mass, which is usually considered like a universal being or God, and then like get recycled into whatever else, or like that we just stop and end, and there's no more us to exist after our deaths. So there's a lot of options here, and we make a lot of assumptions in the spiritual community about what each other believes, which is really not kind and considerate of us, and it's not very inclusive of the community to make those assumptions. And basic ideas like twin flames and soulmates really presumes that other people believe in reincarnation and souls to begin with. So when we get into ethics and morals, these kind of religious beliefs really inform our decision making. So when we face questions like, what is evil? Is this action that I'm taking okay or not? We're really looking at ethics and morals, politics and religion. So we grapple a lot with these topics in the witchy community. I think our favorite topic to debate over is love spells. Yes, even more than whether or not you can charge for spiritual services like readings and spell work. So we often debate. We didn't used to when I was a baby. Back in the early 90s when I was first starting to practice and really getting out there into my witchy self. And that is like, remember I started in metaphysics when I was like 5 and 6. So when I was really getting into my witchy self and spell work, when love spells were a topic for me, I was in the early 90s. It was very much like, no, we don't do spell work. We don't do love spells, period, ever, for any reason whatsoever. At most, you can do like, I sure would like to be loved, but you can't even like specify romantic love. You can just like, a cat will do. So, so now the community is a lot more open-minded about love spells, but they're still very hotly debated, which is very fascinating for me to have seen that evolution. But this here is an example of the way politics plays out in the witchy community. Like, what love spells are allowed, what are the consequences for doing love spells if they are not good and ethical versus like evil and unethical, and what retribution is there for you for breaking those. Will people still hang out with you? Are you willing to associate with someone who breaks those rules? Like if your friend did a love spell on a very particular person that like took away his free will and bound them to loving your friend only, would you still hang out with them? This isn't just a moral and ethical question. This is a political question as well. This is witchy politics right here. Do you excommunicate them from your coven? Do you stop being their friend? Do you stop hanging out with them? Do you go so far as to trash them online or in your social circles? Like, what are the consequences for that? And so you can see, like, in our own community, we have our own politics, and politics stretches even further than that into our greater society at large. So when we have things like questions like, I'm going to take a hot topic here right now, but if we take the prison system and we look at the prison system and we have the question of, what is the purpose of our prison system? Do we have it for raw punishment? You did the crime, you do the time, and then once you have paid your debt, are you done? And then you're free to be a citizen again now that you paid for the consequences? Or is the point of prison rehab? Is that where you go to address the issues that caused you to transgress and break the laws in the first place, and then you come out a healthier human being? Is that why we're sending people to prison? So that they can like reform, become a better person, and when they come back, whatever problem it was that caused them to break the law in the first place is now cured. when we remove people from society that way, what are their expectations? What are our expectations of them when they come back? So these are big moral issues, and these are going to come back to your religious issues or your spiritual beliefs. What do you believe is right and wrong? And how do you believe people work? Can they be reformed? Are they redemptive? Is redemption possible? If someone has transgressed, can they ever be reformed? Can they ever learn to be in society again? And we have these questions faced in movies. We see them struggled with in movies like Escape from LA or Escape from New York. I forget which one of those comes first. I'm bad at my movie history. Sorry, guys. Anyway, Kurt Russell is in them, and the concept of the movies is that all the criminals are sent away to, I'm going to go with New York on this one. New York is an island, and they send all the criminals to New York, and they can't come back out of New York at all because the regular good society doesn't want to deal with them. And they're just exiled there, never to return. They broke the rules. We don't want them anymore. Is that a good and moral thing to do? And like, what level of crime warrants that kind of exile from society? And how do we even administer that kind of justice? Like, how do we determine if someone has really committed such a crime? Like, these are all questions of politics, but they're also moral and ethical questions that fall into the category of spirituality and religious as well. So is it wrong to steal? Is stealing wrong? Is it always wrong, or does context matter? Is murder always wrong, or does context matter? Is violence always wrong, or does context matter? So these questions are all questions that we as individuals have to struggle with, and then as a society we have to kind of come to some kind of agreement on what we're going to do and what the consequences are for people who transgress, and how those consequences are going to play out. And these are all political questions, and I'm only talking about criminality right now. I'm not talking about other things. But other things are also moral questions as well, like, what do you have rights to? As a human being in a wealthy society, like most Western societies, do you have a basic right to food and water? And if you have a basic right to food and water, how do you access that right? Do you have a basic right to speech? If so, how do you access that right, and how is that right protected? And these are all things that the government would provide. Like, our government is supposed to like help protect people and kind of administer universal resources. So how would that play into effect? So these are all political questions that we as individuals have to answer, and then we as a society have to come to an agreement on. So those of us who live a more spiritual, religious, or philosophical life, we also have to address these questions and know where we stand. And we can't be all love and light or whatever. I'm not a fan of love light, but if you are, that's cool. We can't be all love and light or moral and righteous and whatever in our independent lives without expressing that in our more social lives as well. And it's very hard to sit back and see things happen in society that are not okay and that we don't agree with without feeling that impacts us personally. And so I wanted to take this moment to talk about why this channel is going to become both witchier and more political, not always both at the same time overtly, but inherently this channel has always been political. I'm just going to be more overt about it now. And I'm sorry if that makes you uncomfortable, but I really hope you'll stick around at least for a little while to see how that plays out, because I think that the way that I discuss it will be a lot more universally accessible to everyone, and I hope to not make everyone too uncomfortable, but to make people more, to make things more accessible for people, and to really see how this applies to each of us as individuals and how it isn't really separate from our religious and spiritual beliefs. Anyway, that's Nathar at CrowSong Lodge. Thank you for hanging in with me for this long ramble, and I look forward to talking to you in the next one. See you soon. Bye.